Welcome to Known the Podcast. We're Brooke,
Hannah, and Mackenzie,
three friends whose goal is to go deeper into the Word
and to learn about the God that meets us in our everyday lives.
So let's sit, talk, and laugh together as we explore the extraordinary in the ordinary
and discover what it means to know God,
know ourselves,
and make Him known.
Well, hey, hi, hello, and welcome to Known the Podcast. We have a very exciting guest with us here today, Meghann Overholt.
Woo! Woo! Welcome.
Hey.
She is a pastor's wife at our church, a mama, a boss babe, a financial advisor, a bridesmaid at my wedding.
Dear Lord, I feel old when you just said that.
I know. That was 5 years ago, 5.5 years ago.
And I was really new off being pregnant.
Yeah.
I did not look my best.
Yeah, we talked about moving the wedding up a few months, and you were like, absolutely not. I will be about to burst with a baby.
Thanks for allowing me to look mildly good in your dress.
You were adorable pregnant.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know. People said I was real sass.
Oh, I loved your pregnancy sass.
Yeah.
That's true.
The sass comes with the pregnancy. That's
Yeah.
to be expected. If you don't expect that,
You're either sassy or sobby.
I was sassy. I was definitely not soppy.
Yeah, same.
interesting.
I took after you. It was good. I said I liked that, and that was sass.
Yeah.
Well, to get us started, we're going to ask the question we always ask when we have a guest on the pod, which is, when is a time where you have felt known by the Lord?
I think the biggest time I felt his presence in my life is when we lost our son, Eli. Going through something like that tragic and traumatic and just so abrupt, you don't have anything else to lean on but him. Yeah. And even though you're asking all the hard questions of why, what did I do? Did I do something? Could I have done something different? Like through all of that, like the peace that we had in the decision that we had to make and walking through the months of dealing with grief and the questions, like I never felt closer to him. And people that don't have that peace in the Lord and that understanding of healing and I will see him again and just knowing that, they don't understand that peace.
Yeah.
Like we ran into so many people that were in our family that just didn't understand that. They couldn't understand, like, how are you functioning? And I'm like, it's the Lord.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no other way to get through something like that and come out the other side stronger in your faith instead of pulling away than to be founded in him. And I think that Derek and I would say together that that was probably the most challenging time of our life, but also one of the times that we grew closer together to the Lord and to each other.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is beautiful. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
That's great. So today we wanted to have you on to talk about finances because we were having a planning meeting and we were like, okay, the holidays are coming up. What are we going to talk about? And to me, one of the first things I think when I think of holidays is family and then money and budget. And I was like, okay, well, we need to talk about this, but none of us necessarily feel qualified to talk about this. So we're like, we need to get Meghann on. So that's what we did today. Very excited to have you here.
Yeah. Do you want to just maybe give us a little bit of a background as to like how the Lord drew you? I know that you are a like certified financial peace. What would you call that?
I'm a financial coach through Dave Ramsey.
Yes.
Okay,
So,
cool.
Yeah. So maybe just give us some like background of your testimony of like what led you to where you're at today.
Yeah, I think for me, I've always been just like really good with money just in general. Like I got a job at 15. I didn't want my parents to pay for things, even though neither one of them wanted me to get a job. But I saved money. Like I paid my own insurance, things like that. So I've always kind of had a knack for just money in general. And then when Derek and I got married, we were babies, which I think we were all in this room were babies when we got married.
Yeah.
So I think Kenzie was the youngest, but we were all babies. And Derek brought debt into our marriage. And so throughout being like broke young kids. We just kind of continued to make bad decisions, accrue more debt, and kind of stretch ourselves a little bit more thin because I was in college and he was the only one working. And so money was like really, really tight. So extra money normally was like, oh, we'll just pay for this later. Let's swap this credit card. And so, at one point we were looking at each other thinking, oh man, we probably need to fix this. And so we knew the principles of Dave Ramsey, like between both of us. And we started like slowly enacting those. So we did like the envelope method where we would put our monthly bills in, pull them out to pay it. We'd try to budget date nights and groceries and gas and things like that to kind of get us on track. And then we started slowly like paying towards our debt. But with only one working, there's only so much progress you can make with that. And then we had our son, Eli, and he had health issues. And so we still were struggling. At one point, we refinanced some of our credit card debt into our house, which is a big no-no, especially when we bought our house at peak market time. And then when we were ready to get out of that house, it was not peak market time. So it was well overpriced what we needed to get out of it at that point. So, between our son passing away and the debt that we'd accrued, we had a pretty fair amount of money between credit cards and our house being upside down in our house that we needed to kind of work through. And we both decided that was not really the life that we wanted to live. We didn't want to be in debt. We didn't want to have to pay someone every month and have all these payments and kind of feel restricted, like we weren't living. So we made some decisions to start really digging into Dave Ramsey's principles. We actually taught a class at Trinity, the whole class, and then I taught a separate class, just the first portion of the baby steps. And in May of 2020, we were totally 100% debt free, including our house.
What a year to be debt free.
I know, yeah. COVID year, and then we were debt free in May of 20. So it was not without, us sacrificing, but still trying to have ways to live, because I also believe there's a balance in life. Like you can't constantly deny yourself and never go out or never do this, because if you do, you're going to have like one bad day, and it's going to set you off, and you're going to have like a whole weekend of like, I've not had any of these things, and you're just going to splurge on everything. Yeah. And so you just give in. And then the next thing you know, you're back right to where you were, or worse, because you had a really bad spending spree that weekend. So it's all about balance when you're trying to figure out what works. But the Lord just really imparted in Derek and I like that want to not live that life. My dad has always been good with money. He had some credit card debt, I think, when he was like younger in life, and he got out of it. My mom, was a single mom, lived paycheck to paycheck. That was something that I grew up with. And that was Derek's mom. She was a single mom, didn't have a lot of income, then had some health issues. And so like we both saw our parents just struggle. And we both decided that we just didn't want to live that life. Like we didn't want to continue that cycle. We didn't want that for our kids. And so we knew we'd have to be different, have to do something different. Like I can't continue to do the same thing and expect a different outcome. Yeah. So we made changes, did budgets, really kind of sacrificed early on in our marriage to get to where we are now, which is being debt free and being able to kind of live life. I mean, we're still saving, probably not as much as we should, but we're still saving, still investing, and still living life. And I think that that's an important balance to find. Yeah.
No, that's really good. Where do you think that discipline came from for you guys? And what would you say to someone who's like, yes, I want to be debt free. I want to make those steps. I don't know how, or I don't think that I can, or even I've tried in the past and haven't been able to.
So I think if you're single, and if you don't have a partner in life, the first step is really finding an accountability partner. I think that that's someone that you would trust to be able to talk to about money, because I know that's a pretty sensitive topic. Most people are like, ooh, cringe away from money.
Yeah.
You don't want to talk about this. I don't want anybody to know what I make. Or it's kind of like, you're a sinner and you go to church, but you don't want people to know you're a sinner. It's kind of the same thing. Like, you don't want people to know about your money. Oh, I do have a secret addiction. I like purses, so I have a big credit card. So you just try to figure out first, like, that accountability partner. Who can I trust to do this with me, to hold me accountable, that I will call when I'm maybe messed up or I'm thinking about it, or to help encourage me to get me back on track. Like, so I think if you're single, that's a great step.
Mm-hmm.
If you're married, you got to do that with your partner. So you've got to have your spouse on board with, and you have to come to the table together and agree on whatever that outcome is. So, like, if you're married, you're sitting down at the table and you're mapping out, here's our income, here's our expenses, what's left over, and what do I want to do with that?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Dave Ramsey's pretty strict about naming every dollar. I think that can feel pretty restricting. People don't want to feel that way when they're trying to live their life. Like, so I would say you just need to have a plan for your money, a goal that you both can come together with and agree on. And then you have to be okay holding each other accountable. Like, there was a point in our marriage where Derek and I would call each other before we would spend money, even if it was $20. Like, we would call, because that's kind of where we were in our life. Like, $20 was $20.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
That was a lot of money 10, 15 years ago too.
yeah. So, like, we would call and, hey, can I buy this?
Mm-hmm.
Do we have money for this? And then we would look it up. Yeah, we do. We can do that this month. Sometimes the answer was no, unless it was an emergency, which is why you have emergency fund. You have something set aside to help with, my alternator went out, I need new tires, whatever it is. I think, like, it's also your first few months of, like, sitting down and doing a spending plan or a budget. It's not going to work. Like, your first few months, you're probably not going to get it right. You're going to have to shift things around, because a lot of times, like, your water bill or your electric bill, they're going to fluctuate. So you're going to have to kind of do an average. If you have fluctuating income, you got to figure out what that average is. Like, if you don't make the same every 2 weeks or every month, you got to figure out how that works. So sitting down, naming everything that you have expense-wise that you have, and your income is kind of the first step. But just know you're going to mess up. It's just like when you want to try this new diet, or you're going to work out, you're going to miss a day here and there, but that doesn't mean you're not successful and you can't get back up and you can't do it again. You just got to figure out what works for you. And I don't think there's any one way to do it. You have to figure out what works in your life, what works for your setup between you and your husband. Like, do you have the same bank account? Do you have separate accounts? Do you come together and you put it in one account? Whatever works for you. Derek and I share an account. All our money is our money. The only separate account we had is business, because it's easier for IRS purposes to have a totally separate account that's just for business. So I just think, just know, yes, you can. I'm a real life example of, like, if that's the goal that you want to have, you want to get out of debt, you can do that. Like, by 32, we were done with that. You just have to make sacrifices now. And maybe you don't have the latest iPhone or the brand new car now, so that you can have those things later. Yeah. So it's like a short-term sacrifice for a long-term gain. What am I going to get out of it in the end? And what kind of life am I going to be able to live? What kind of giving am I going to be able to do? Yeah. What kind of serving can I do? Like, I can take off work and I can go on mission field because I have savings back. I have the money to do that. You know what? This friend, they need X and they don't have the money. I can give that to them because I don't have all this debt that is holding me back from being able to give like the Lord calls us to.
Yeah, that's so good. I definitely want to talk about the instant gratification piece maybe later on. But for those who don't know, can you give some details about the Dave Ramsey baby steps and things like that? Because I know you mentioned that a little while ago.
So there's 7 baby steps. I think the first 3 are probably the most like relevant and important, I think, for kind of where most people are in life, maybe to 4. So like 1 is having an emergency fund. So depending on your income, it's either $500 or $1,000.
Okay.
2 is doing your debt snowball So it's essentially taking your credit cards, paying them off, lowest to highest. And then as you pay one off, you take that payment and you tack it on to the next one. So that's why it's called a snowball. You're adding more income or more payments to it, to whatever you're paying on. The third one is putting 3 to 6 months of expenses back in your savings. So if something was to happen, you couldn't work, you lost your job, you have the ability to pay your bills should something like that happen. And hopefully no more than 6 months, you would be back into having a job and have that at least some income back. And 4 is the investing piece. And so I think that's where most people kind of pause, because after that, it's paying off your mortgage and those kind of bigger ticket items that take a bit longer to get to. And that's why I like to focus on those first 3 to 4, because those seem realistic to people. When you get to, pay off your house, people are like, I still got to pay off my credit card. I can't even think about paying off my house. And it's just like a glazed over, this is too much information type of moment. And I think that's what I realized in teaching the class is all that information is good. But for someone that's living in this place of I have so much debt, that's not realistic to them. They're like, I can never get there. And so I like to break it down in those 2 sections because I think that's more feasible. I can attain this. Beginning to paying off my mortgage, that's not attainable. That's what people think when you're going through trying to make those changes. Too much at one time feels like a lot.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so I feel like what you said about the long-term goal, what's going to benefit me in the long run. I feel like that's definitely difficult. It's difficult for anybody, but I feel like especially for our generation, because everything is pushed in front of us of we are constantly keeping up with the Joneses in every sense of the term. So how would you explain the importance of money being a resource and not idolizing things that idolizing items or materialistic things?
I think it's important to realize that money is just another tool that God's given us to manage. Just like our car is something that He's given us. It's all the things that we have in life are His, that He's entrusting us to manage and steward well. Just like the tool, like a hammer is just a tool. The money is just a tool, as a resource for us. And I think it's important for us to realize that with that kind of instant gratification, or everything, Instagram and Facebook and Snapchat and all those things being in your face, and people have their lives, for you to see, but you're only seeing what they want to show you. And so you're seeing them go on fancy vacations, and you're seeing your friends go on these great cruises or buy these new cars, and but you don't know how many payments they have. Maybe they're struggling to pay their bills. They're only showing you what they want you to see, this perception of their life. And it's hard to fight that, because everybody wants the latest and greatest. They don't want to be behind. They don't want to be the odd one out. They want to have all the great things. And I mean, we feel that for our kids, watching Allie go to school and her being I'm the different one because she dances and they play sports. So she's already feeling that now of I'm different. And so no one wants to feel that way. But I think it's important for us to know how God views us and how God views what we have and what He's entrusted us with. And He tells us that we need to manage the things that we have and manage them well. And we forget that everything is His. And I think once we can get into that perspective of all that I have is His, and without Him, I won't have these things. Giving ownership back to Him, I think, is an important foundation of everything that we have. The money that we have, the jobs that we have, it's all His, that He's entrusted us to steward well. And I think it's important for us to realize whatever happens on this earth is temporary. What are we doing with the time that we have here, with the resources that He's given us? And is that furthering the kingdom? And I think if we are constantly living in a place where we're paying our credit cards or we're paying all these payments, what are we doing with the tool that God's given us? What are we doing with that money? Could we do something better with it?
Yeah.
Can we buy food at a homeless shelter? Can we donate to a food box? Can we buy our friend a car because we have the funds to do that? Like, those are just questions I think that we should ask ourselves when we're thinking about decisions with our money. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't have nice things. Like, God also entrusts us with the small things to have the larger things, right? So he's entrusting us to do that. And he doesn't say we can't build wealth or we can't have nice things. I just think you have to figure out what that balance is to make sure that you're still honoring God in all that you're doing with the funds that he's given you.
Yeah, because I feel like there can be kind of a split here where people are either so frivolous with money because it seems almost like a poverty mindset of like everything I have is the Lord. So like I'm just trusting the Lord day to day and almost enjoy that state of like need. Or there's like this other side of it where people don't want to spend anything at all. That's either fear-based or like I need to stock up for a rainy day or like what's going to happen tomorrow or my entire basement needs to be filled with canned goods kind of a thing, you know? And so how do you encourage people to not, you know, kind of just spend everything out of frivolosity, but also not store up out of a place of fear?
Yeah, I mean, God tells us to not have the spirit of fear, right? And that's easier said than done. Like when we're living in it, when, you know, with the current state, with all the division and the fear and the unknowns and the uncertainty, people were afraid. I'm sure tithing is down, giving is down. Like people are hoarding things. They're not building things. They're not buying things because they just have this fear of like, I don't know what's coming.
Yeah.
And so I'm just going to keep it all close. But God doesn't want us to live in that place. Like he never wants us to live in that place of fear. But also I think like we can't live in this victim mentality where, well, my parents had this, you know, paycheck to paycheck. So I'm going to live paycheck to paycheck. Like you can't continue this cycle of that mentality, that victim mentality. And also I think it can cultivate a spirit of like laziness, like especially if you're not working just because I think it can be where you're having a spirit of laziness, but then you're not entrusting the Lord to help you progress. So I just think you're right. There is a balance that needs to be had there. And it's hard to fight through what you've grown up with, because so much of how we manage our money and our expectations and how we talk about money a lot of times is mirrored by what we saw our parents do, right? Like when we saw them live paycheck to paycheck, or if they ever talked about money. So many kids, their parents never talked about money in front of them. And so their first experience with money is when they get a job. And they're like, ooh, I have all this money. I can do all this. Like I'm trying to teach Allie now we do commissions instead of chores, calling them chores and getting paid for chores. But I'm trying to teach her now, like save, tithe, spend. That's like, I think foreign language to her. She's like, let's buy this. Like, you don't need that. But she's like, let's spend it. I mean, I had to take her card away.
Oh,
I know. I took her debit card away. I said, no, ma'am.
You're over budget.
That's my debit card.
She said accountability partner.
I know you don't like me, but too bad. You know, so because she wasn't managing it. Like we gave her a card. She can't overspend on her little debit card. It has a hold on it.
Okay.
But I was entrusting her to use the check register. We showed her how to do it, to write down the money and to take it out. And she went with her memo somewhere and she came back and she said, I bought something. I said, how much? And she said, $5. I said, you didn't have $5 in your account. I said,
you're overdrawn.
Give me your card. And so I said, you can't have it back until you can show me that you can manage it.
Yeah.
We're working on it.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah. How old is she, for those who don't know?
Oh, yes. My daughter, Allie, is 11, thinking she's a teenager. I don't know what's happening. I might have to rely on all of you for help when that happens.
Ooh, we're here and we're ready.
Whew, Jesus, take the wheel. So yeah, and we've been working on that with her, and it's hard because her friends have all these things, and they just get an allowance, like they just get given money, and I don't want to teach her that. Like I want to teach her to work for the things that she has. And so it's a constant balance of trying to navigate, like, well, my friends have this, but I have to do this. And I'm like, I love your friends, but I'm not their mom. So what they do is great for them. This is what we're doing. And it's hard because it's different. And no one likes to be different.
But it's important too.
It is. I think you have to I think you need to talk to your kids about money, and you talk to them early about the importance of it. Teaching them the importance of giving, teaching the importance of being open about conversations about money, so that when later in life, when they get married, they'll be able to have those conversations too. Because I think if our parents maybe hid money from us, or maybe your mom didn't tell your dad about things, like it can just cultivate this spirit of like lying and deception and like hiding things from each other. And that's not what you want in a marriage. Like you want to be open, and sometimes, like, you know, about 50% of marriages end in divorce because of money, right? Like they're struggling around the concept of money because they have to figure out how it works. And you've got two different lifestyles coming together, trying to figure out how can we manage our money together. And it's challenging. It's all about communication, which is the other piece of marriage struggles. So it's trying to figure out how best to manage that, and that's hard.
So practically, what does money stewardship look like?
I think so. To me, stewardship of money looks like knowing what you have, knowing what you're paying out, and then knowing what you have left. And I think setting goals for that. Like I don't think that there's a place where we're always buying the latest and greatest car or the latest and greatest iPhone, and we're making all these payments. Like, I don't think that's what the Lord would have wanted for us. I think there are better ways to get those things. Like if that's a goal that you would have in mind, because I'm not saying you can't have new things, that you can't buy that shirt that you've saved for, that purse that you want. Like, I'm not saying we have to live like we have nothing. I think you just have to make better decisions about how you obtain those things, while also still remembering that God needs to be at the forefront of that, and that if He's calling us to give, that's always first in comparison to whatever we want. And so the best way to have those funds available is to get out of those places where you might be paying on that car for 10 years and you've paid for it twice, right? Maybe you have a mortgage, but you choose the 15-year option if you have that availability, and you're paying it off earlier, so you can get to those places sooner. But those are the things that I would think about, and then ask yourself, do I need this? And do I need this now? Like, can it wait? Derek and I, we saved for my car that we bought, and we paid cash for it. Yes, it's a sacrifice. It's driving around the beater car, whatever you would call a beater car that has, 200,000 miles on it, but you're putting back money you're saving to get whatever car you might want to have next. And then you're not paying payments, you're not paying interest, and you're not paying more for the car that you're driving off the lot that's losing its value. So it's just making better decisions long term. I think other practical ways that Derek and I really saved money, like we share a meal when we go out. Now, if you have a husband that's like, "Rawr, don't share a meal with me," sorry, that may not work for you. But Derek and I, we would share a meal. We'd get water. We'd share a meal. I mean, we spent this was before inflation killed us all. So we spent $12 one time when we ate out at O'Charlie's. We shared chicken tenders. We got waters. We spent $12. It was great.
Beautiful.
So I think that's always an option, sharing a meal. And setting aside money for your dates, or if you, as we think about the holidays, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about Christmas. It's family
Mm-hmm.
and it's money.
Mhm.
That's what most people think about Christmas.
Yeah.
That's not what it should be, but that's
Yeah.
what we think about.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I don't know about y'all, but I'm already thinking about Christmas.
Mhm.
I've
Me
already
too.
bought Christmas gifts. Like they're hidden in the closet because that's what I'm planning for. But Christmas comes the same time every year.
Mhm.
That is not a shocker to anybody.
Mhm.
So I think it's wise for you to set aside money for Christmas.
Mhm.
Just like you were planning on going on a vacation. Like you might set aside $100 a month and then you're ready for when you're buying Christmas gifts. Something that Derek and I did when we were early in our marriage was we would set a limit on, we have divorced families. So we've got mom and dad on both sides. And then we had uncles and aunts and all the things. And so we'd say, okay, we're going to spend X amount of money on
Each present.
each
Mhm.
present. Like, so it's $50 on each parent. And that was the
Okay.
max we'd spend. And that's because that's what we had. That's what we could
Mhm.
manage. And then now it's how much are we going to spend on the kids?
Mhm.
Like setting a budget, setting a
Mhm.
limit.
Yeah.
This is what we're going to spend. And so if you can set that in advance, then you can save that to where when you get to Christmas, you have the money already set aside.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Or maybe you don't get each other gifts. Like you and your spouse, you don't get each other gifts. Maybe you just get your extended family, or you have a big family and you do a name draw, something like that kind of spreads out the money. So it's not as much. Or maybe it's been a really hard year and I'm giving you a Christmas card and a hug and a kiss
Mhm.
because I can't buy everyone presents this year.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Like your family will love you and they'll still understand that and they'll know and respect it where you are in your
Yeah.
life.
Mhm.
And if they don't, then that's really a conversation that they need to be having with the Lord.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's nice. Maybe there's something that you can make or something that's more affordable. I know there have been times like in my family where we would do homemade gifts for Christmas or different things like that. But it doesn't have to be expensive to be meaningful or to be thoughtful. Like a
Yeah.
handwritten card can be great,
Yeah.
or different things. I think it is important to budget things for the holidays is so big, especially with you and your spouse, just to be on board with the same things. And then, just being creative of like, let's do a name draw. We've done that in my family. We switched to doing a name draw as our family's getting bigger. My younger brother turned 18 this year, so he just got kicked up to the adult drawing. He's not getting the kid.
Oh,
Where
Yes.
everyone
poor
gets
Levi.
him a present. He's in
Right.
the,
Yeah,
like,
he's
Secret
over 18
Santa.
now,
Yes,
so now
I see.
he has to.
I know. Sometimes I want to revert back and be like in the kid pool, like
Yeah.
everybody gets
I
a
know.
present.
Yeah, he was suggesting our budget for the adults this year, and I said, "Okay, money bags with no kids and no mortgage."
Yeah, just because you have that money doesn't mean we can do
He
that.
wanted to do $200 a person.
I
I
need
love
to
that.
be
I
on the
was
sibling
aghast.
chat. Like, let me get in on that sibling chat that
Yeah.
Jen was in earlier. I need to be
Oh.
on that.
He also doesn't have two people to pay for.
That's what. Yeah,
Like couples have.
Couples
You're
double.
spending $400
Yeah.
on Christmas.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he
that's a
was
lot.
funny. Yeah, not to put Levi on blast.
We love you, Levi. Sorry.
Love you. Welcome to the adult group.
Welcome to adulting.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not fun.
Sometimes it's not fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think also if you know ahead of time like what your budget's going to be on things, then you have time to like shop for the things you want to find and try and find good deals.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that's another part of like stewarding money is being willing to wait for things long enough to be able to find them for less expensive.
Mhm.
Like if you really want the nice thing, figure out a way to get it at a discounted price, whatever that looks like. Stick
Yep.
it in your cart on that website and see if they send you a, hey, your cart's waiting for you. Here's 15% off
Yeah.
email, or like see what you can do.
Yeah.
Well, and then sometimes you realize you don't need it.
Yeah.
Mm.
Like-
Sometimes you forget.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you see it at the store and it's absolutely that impulse buy and you're like, oh my gosh, I must have X. And then you have to check yourself. Oh, maybe I need to wait. I don't have the money this month. And then the next thing you know, you're like, oh, I didn't really miss that.
Yeah.
This was something you didn't need. But yeah, absolutely, like shopping on sale. So like if you do set the budget in January for Christmas, you have that whole year to look out for those things. to buy when they might go on sale, or you can like do a buy one get one, like if they're running that, and get it for a better deal. Like there are so many ways that you can get to the end result and just be smarter about it instead of just buying it right then and there at whatever that price is, without pausing and reflecting on the need and the want and separating out that, like, do I need this or do I want this?
Yeah, I'm a stress spender and I'm an impulsive spender. So these are things that I have to like check myself on frequently. Something that I did at the beginning of the year last year was I thought about things that were more like investments that I had thought about wanting the previous year, and I wrote them down. And then throughout the year, I've looked at that list, and if I still wanted it, then I knew, okay, I've thought about this a long time. It's no longer an impulse buy. This is more of an investment because I'll still use it. And then another thing that Zach and I did was no spend months. So we would do like, okay, month of January, we started last year. We didn't spend anything besides like groceries, gas bills. And that alone is like, to me, I almost view it as a form of fasting because like, especially for our generation, it's just so natural just to swipe your card and get whatever you want. Like that's just the mindset, I feel like, for a lot of people. For sure. And so it really was like focusing in on the Lord and like focusing in on like, it was team building for he and I to just be like, we can do this. We can work at this together. And then let's see what happens at the end of the month. And we did that twice last year, and it was super beneficial for us.
I think you can make a lot of strides with that. Like, and you're doing it together, which is important. Like when you're in a marriage and there's always just like tug and pull with money, and you're constantly like checking each other, like I might want this purse. I think you said, Zach, like shoes, right? So like, so like we each have our things, right? Like that we want more. Like I have way too many sweatshirts that I don't need, but I love sweatshirts. You never have too many big baggy sweatshirts to put on. But like, do I really need another sweatshirt? Probably not. Should I wait? Yes, I should. So like, that's kind of like, Derek is my spender in our family, in case nobody on this podcast knew, is the spender. Like, so he has the toys, he likes the latest and greatest. And so like our conversations are constantly him being like, look what I found on Marketplace, and this would be such a good deal, and this is an investment. And I'm constantly like, okay, like trying to have these conversations and talk it out. Sometimes it's no, not right now, especially because we built a house.
Also debt free. Come on.
Woo. Yeah, that was just like the Lord setting us up for that was just really cool. Like we had a great year last year of like Derek finding flip houses. And so we were able to put that money in the savings, and then we didn't know we were going to buy land. I don't know why I need 7 acres, but now no one's building around me, which is great. And build a house like that. That was something we talked about, but we never thought we'd actually do. Yeah. It was mostly because I'm no risk taker in our marriage. And so every time he'd mention that, I'd be like, no. And then he mentioned this, and we went and looked this land, and I was like, this is it. Wow. Yeah. So we ventured in building a house, and we were able to do that debt-free. And basically what we put back in our savings from those flip houses completed that circle. Wow. So it was the Lord really setting us up for that and putting that in place. Yeah. So it was a really cool experience. Derek about killed himself to build that house and get it done in record time, but it's done and it's beautiful and it's such a blessing. And
what was it? 6 months?
Less than.
We broke ground beginning of March, and we were moved in July like 22nd, 21st, somewhere in there.
Yeah, so like 4 months, 5 months.
Yeah, crazy.
That in 2024, that's insane.
That is crazy.
That is crazy.
Yeah, it was.
Wow.
Yeah, it was truly just God moving through and just putting things in place, because we knew what we needed out of our house. A realtor was saying, you shouldn't ask that much. And I'm like, we're going to ask that much. And we got an offer. We were told that it would probably take because of the budget range we were in, that it would probably take a while to get an offer just because of the range. Within a week, we had an offer.
Yeah.
And we're moving forward. And I was like, okay, we're actually going to do this. And then I had to move into this tiny home.
Yes.
Which was such a bonding experience.
Yeah. Can you just tell us like your square footage that you went from and then to in your in-between house?
So the house that we lived in that we sold, because we sold our house, so we knew how much we had to build with. Got to count your costs. That's important. So we were in about a 2,700 square foot house, 5 bedrooms, 3.5 baths. I'm counting. And moved into like a 1,200 square foot or less 2-bedroom mobile home in which the kids shared a room.
Wow.
The master room, because it was the biggest. And Derek and I were in the other room where we literally had a bed. And that was it. So there was quite a few bonding moments in that. The kids didn't kill each other, which I thought was really good for sharing a bedroom
Praise
together.
God. Especially during the summer, too. You didn't even have school or
Oh,
anything
yeah.
breaking it up.
I think I about killed everybody because I was trying to work from home and then they were right there in the living room, and I learned a lot of patience. It was good.
Wow.
God was teaching.
God
me
uses
through all
everything.
Good.
He does, you know?
Yeah.
And so, but I think Derek was the one that felt it the most. And he was like, we got to get this going. I can't live like this. We got to go.
It was the AC that got him.
Yeah, it wasn't working right in that mobile home, but it was fine.
Yeah.
I was just like, it's all good. So,
Yeah. But I feel like that's such a good testimony of like, you got to do the hard thing to get to. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, I absolutely did not want to sell our house. And the original plan was to live in an RV, which I am not an RV person. Go, Catherine. You got this. That was not me. And I just didn't want to do that. And he was like, we just need to. Like, how are we going to know what we have if we don't do this? And I was like, okay, let's do it. And so, yeah. And then we had to figure out where, you know, Kim went to make sure she had a safe place to go. So it was navigating all of that. It worked out beautifully. Like I said, the Lord just really laid everything out in a beautiful way. And yes, it was stressful, but I got something great out of it. Like I have a beautiful place, a place that I hope that we'll be able to use for ministry and to have a safe place for people. Like we have an extra room. And I think like Derek and I love to host, and like it's just a perfect open place to do that. It's a safe place for our kids to run around and hopefully in the future maybe build on the land because we have space for that. Like it could be future homes. So they're already fighting about who gets the front and who gets the back plot. And I'm like, you're 11 and 5. Calm down. Like I can't talk about marriage. I'm not old enough for that.
That's what it is. Whoever gets married first gets dibs.
That's
Yeah.
100%
That's how it works
what
in my
Derek said. And I
family.
was like, I can't even think about marriage. Like,
Yeah.
Allie's like, I want to have this many kids. And I'm like, I just need you to pause, please.
Like, you don't even have a debit card yet.
Like,
yeah, maybe learn to control your money, honey.
or your emotions a little bit more. Like, you're killing me here.
Wow.
So
2 great pieces of advice right there.
I know. Listen, we're all not great at it, but we got to figure out.
Yeah.
You are capable of self-control.
Ooh,
it's there.
yes.
You just got to
Yeah.
find it when you're struggling.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's really good.
Something I'm saying a lot lately is the Holy Spirit always equips you to make the right choice. You can always make the right choice. And
Yeah.
then to myself, I'm like, Hannah, the Holy Spirit always equips you.
Yes, on those hard days, we have to give ourselves pep talks.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
You just have to have that to get through.
I
It's
love that.
important.
Yeah.
So some of the best piece of advice that I was given about finances was don't overspend in every category, but figure out what's important to you and put your money there, and then try to save on the areas that are not as important to you. So I'm cutting cost in a lot of areas in my life, but one thing that I spend a lot of money on is food, because that's really important to me.
Mhm.
The food that I eat and me and Austin eat, and food that I share with people who come over and host, like that's a big heart passion of mine to do that. So that's where honestly a lot of our extra money goes, is in the good quality food, vegetables, beef, all of that.
Yeah.
Do you have any like overarching best pieces of advice that you've been given
I think that you really touched on like what I would tell people is like, find what's important to you and make sure that that's reflected in how you set up the way that you spend your money. I think if you, like we talked about, like if you're denying yourself so much, there's going to be a point where you go over that cliff because you've denied yourself for too long. And so you'll make really bad decisions during that time.
Yeah.
Where you're stressed out and you might be stress spending, or you have ate really bad and you feel really bad about yourself. So you go out and you buy all these other things. Like, so I think it's just important for you to decide what is a value for you. And as like, so if you're married, that you're setting up that budget to be reflective of that. And that doesn't mean you have like the same amount every month, right? Like, so typically January is like the struggle month for everyone, right? Like you've come off the holidays, you've probably overspent, you've definitely overate. And so you're trying to evaluate what does my life look like in this year? And so that's when you set goals, right? Or New Year's resolutions that you keep for 2 weeks and then you're done, right? And so as we kind of think about like what the next few months look like, you're going to move through your holiday season, and whatever Christmas looks like for you this year. And then you're going to hopefully set goals for your next year. And I recommend setting attainable goals, right? Like if you know over the past year, my average income was X, if you're not going to be able to pay off like whatever that high thing is, high credit card, your car pay, your car, whatever, like then don't set that because you're only setting yourself up for failure. Like in order for us to feel encouraged to continue on whatever path we're on, I think you have to have your victories in there. Like you have to feel like you're accomplishing whatever it is. So I recommend like setting like small goals, medium goals, and then larger goals, things that you can obtain. And then reminding yourself of that. Like if your goal, Brooke, for example, is to have a place to live on your parents' land, whatever that is, tiny home, RV, modular, what are the steps I need to take to get there? And how can I still live my life without feeling like I'm eating ramen noodles, which I know you're not, but like I'm eating ramen noodles every night. I never get that coffee that I normally like, or I'm never going out with my friends and I feel like a recluse. Like how can I manage both of those things and still feel like I'm moving towards that goal, but also still having a healthy and productive life?
Yeah.
And that answer won't be the same for Kinsey, and it's not going to be the same for Hannah. Like, and won't be the same for me. You have to figure out what that is, come together with your spouse, and make sure you're both on the same page, because that's the other piece. Like, if he's in left field and you're on this field, you're never going to align. And you're going to be pushing and pulling with each other to get whatever that goal is. And so you still have to make sure that your spouse is accounted for, whatever their value is. Can I accommodate that to where we're both getting what we need to feel valued and honored and feel like the money that I'm earning, I get to partake in a little bit of that, but still getting towards whatever that goal is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen where people like say they are impulse spenders and they really want to buy something, where instead of buying something for that amount of money, they look at how much, so say they put something in the cart that was like $35. Instead of actually checking out with that, they go and transfer $35 from their account into their savings. So it's like, for some people that can like still have like that rush of like, oh, I did something, but it's actually just transferring it into your savings instead. And, you know, it's just kind of that like instant, I did something without actually getting that item in the mail in a couple days.
Little financial reverse psychology.
Yeah. Be like, oh, I clicked a button and something happened, so I guess I can turn this off.
And now I have less money in my account.
Wow. What a day we've had.
I still spent it.
Yeah. I did.
I still got that rush of spending.
Yeah.
I also would say that like it's important to, so for anyone that is like a young adult, like maybe in their teenage years or in their like early 20s, like maybe just now getting 19 and 20, and maybe you don't have debt, which congrats on that.
Yeah.
But invest, like do those things now. Like if you just put $100 in an IRA or a mutual fund, compound interest is your friend. Like, and you just put it in every month, and now you can have it set up to where it pulls out of your account automatically. So you don't have to remember to do it. That's how we save for our IRAs. We have it pulled out and we have it put in an account. So it's automatically withdrawn. Yeah. Like, you'll be able to retire a millionaire.
Yeah.
Like, you'll have that if you start early. Like, someone that starts in their mid-30s, they'll never obtain that $1 million because the compound interest that you lost in those years.
Yeah.
So, like, it's hard to think when you're like 19 or 20, I need to be investing for when I retire. That's weird. That's weird to think about, but it's so important for you to do because Social Security either isn't going to be there when we get there, or it's definitely not going to be enough when you do get there. And so if you want to continue to have whatever level of life that you want at that age, you've got to start making those choices now. And I think it's so hard to look, like you said, we're in this generation where it's like this instant gratification. It's all these short-term solutions to things instead of pausing and waiting and reflecting on the longer goals in life and the places you want to be. And I don't want to work until I'm like 70 or 75. So how can I accomplish that? Or maybe you want to retire like in your 50s. Like, how can I set myself up to do that so I can get that goal? Like, if you want to retire early, do it. You just have to set yourself up to do it.
Yeah. So do you have any specific companies or financial advisors that you'd be okay recommending to the general, or would you say talk to someone and get their advice one-on-one?
Yeah, I definitely recommend, like, we started with our bank first is like just a good place to start and have those conversations, see what our bank offered. Over the past couple of years before we built the house, they had CDs that we kind of, at like short-term places we could build. They would just hold money for like 18 months. And so I got interest off that for just my money that was already in my savings. Now I just locked it in there. So I had some options there, but I just recommend first, like, looking at your bank, seeing what they have, starting small. Like, you don't have to make these big grand investments. I'm not saying go get into the stock market or anything like that. Like, I think starting small is just a step in the right direction, and doing your research, like making sure it's a reputable company, talk to someone that's more experienced in that area and find what works best, like, for your situation. But yeah, our bank was where we started.
Where are the best places to put your savings? And if you were going to start investing, like, where would you start baseline?
So obviously you need to have a savings account just in general, right? Like at your local bank, wherever you bank at, have a savings account. It's probably not going to get much interest at all, especially in this climate that we're in. If you are at a place of employment that has 401ks, you need to be investing, especially whatever they're matching. You need to match that percentage. It's free money. You're giving it away. Just so at a minimum, you need to be doing those things, putting money in savings, investing in a 401k if you're at a place that has that as an option.
And they'll take it out of your paycheck before you even get it, right? Most companies, if not all. Okay.
Yeah, mine comes directly out, so I don't have to do anything. I just have to opt in.
Yes.
And it comes directly out, and I'm matching exactly what they match. And then the third thing is we do IRAs. Roth IRAs is where we invested ours in for our next step. You can put, I think, $5,000 per person.
Single, I think, and like seven. I think it's 7,000 now. I could be wrong. I have an. That's what I invest in too. Is an IRA, and I think it's like for the year you have a certain amount, and it changes every year.
Yeah, well, and then it's different for single and to married, like what you can invest in. And then your income can play a piece in that. Like if you're at a certain threshold, you need to change the type of IRA you have. So I would say next would be an IRA, a Roth, usually more than a traditional. And then after that is I would do research on mutual funds. Those are supposed to be kind of the next ones that you'd want to invest in, but you've got to do your research and find the best one. Yeah. That works. My portfolio is a little bit of a mixed range. Like I don't have everything in high risk and not everything in low risk. So it's kind of like some are in here and I've got medium. So So it is making some progress, but if the stock market crashes, I'm not losing absolutely everything.
I love that.
And so it's just kind of a good balance, especially over the years where we've watched the stock market go up and down, especially as the elections approach and everything. I would also say, like, if you have capacity, investing in your kids' savings, like doing a savings, doing a educational fund would be important for them. Doing the research into an educational fund that if they choose not to go to college, like when can you access that money? Because like you're making a decision when they're a year old if they're going to go to college, and they might not go a traditional route. But I don't want my kids to take loans, and I want them to have the option to go to college if they want to. And so I have the capacity. And so we started their educational funds as soon as we got their Social Security cards.
That's amazing.
Our bank has a little college savings account. Knoxville TVA has little college savings accounts. They're not 529s, but you can put money in too. So like if you get to that point, like where stop buying gifts for my kids because I can't fit anything else in my house, how about you maybe buy a small gift and you put the rest of that in this account? So it's an easy access for the grandparents and the aunts and uncles and whatever siblings to put money in there to contribute to their education. So if you can get them, I have grandparents and their love language is gifts. So it's real hard to talk to them about long-term gifts instead of instant gifts. But those I think are just kind of some things that we've done that would have really worked for us.
I think just our experience a bit, Joel and I, before we got married, went through the financial peace class, which was a bit odd for us because neither of us had debt at the time, which Joel had paid off his student loans before we got married. And then I worked through college and did some online school and got scholarships and was able to pay my way through. And so by the grace of God, we've stayed debt free except for our mortgage throughout our whole marriage. And because of that, we've been able to save for cars instead of go in debt for cars. I remember we needed to buy a car and I was telling Derek about this one that I was thinking about, and he's like, I would hate to see y'all spend that much money. And I was like, really? And he was like, yeah, like just to go in debt is just hard. And I'm like, oh no, like I'm buying it. And he was like, well, that's fantastic. Congratulations. He like hugged me. Yeah, like, that's great. And I was like, okay. I just wanted to know what you thought about the car.
Yeah.
He's like, that'll last you a good long time. I'm like, that's what I want. But I think it also is sometimes it's just encouraging to hear, like, it is hard to do it to start out now. And I think when Joel and I were first married, it was like, it kind of feels like when you're young, you had to spend all this money and get in debt to then pay it off and have those things. It felt backwards almost of like, how am I supposed to get a mortgage if I don't have credit card debt to show that I pay off things? Like, doesn't showing I'm responsible with money help? And it doesn't.
It doesn't.
It doesn't help at all.
Yeah, it doesn't. And I think that that's the one thing that like I would tweak a bit about that. His philosophy about Dave Ramsey's philosophy is like, Derek and I are pretty strict about credit cards because we did not use them properly, right? Like we overspent, we weren't able to pay them off. Like we did not do well with them. And so like our fear of getting back to that place is what keeps us from like, don't do credit cards, don't do it, because we had a really bad experience with that. But like we know someone that didn't have any debt, saved up a lot of money, and then they went to get a mortgage, and it was like an act of Congress to get it. Like so many hoops they had to go through, and just because they didn't have a high credit score. And I think that's super unfortunate. Like when you have like $50,000 to put down and they're like, where's your credit score? It's like, what do you mean I have $50,000? Like,
right.
Who has that at my age? And so I think not everybody is able to have a credit card. Like you have to know yourself and know, can you manage that? So you have to find alternative ways. Like if you know you can't manage a credit card well, don't do it. Don't get one. Don't put yourself in that situation. So you have to find other ways to build your credit, and it's hard.
Yeah.
And so maybe you have to get a credit card because like the cell phone is the only way to go, to help your credit other than that.
Mm-hmm.
So you get one, but you have to have really strict rules. So that's where that accountability partner comes in. It's like, you have to help yourself be successful with it. And I know like Mark and Melissa booked their cruise by putting all their bills on their credit card and getting all the points. And so like, yes, there are benefits to having them, but you have to be able to be responsible with them. And if you're just not in that place, don't set yourself up for failure. Like, don't put yourself in a place that you can't get out of because it's so easy to just swipe it. There's no actual release of the funds to see the transaction. And so you don't think about it. Your brain doesn't think about it the same way as if like I was handing you $20, I'm only getting 10 back. Like you can see the decrease where with the credit card or even your debit card, you're not seeing that visually when you do it. And so your brain isn't really catching up to that. And so if you can't manage that, then you're the one in the relationship that doesn't have the credit card because you can't currently make a good decision with it. And you're only going to set yourself backwards because it's easy to do this a lot. And then the next thing you know, you get your statement and you go, what did I buy?
Yeah.
What is on this?
Yeah. Little charges add up too.
Yeah. You're like, oh, I really want that drink. Swipe.
Yep.
And then the next thing you know, you have 5 of those drinks and you're like, what did I spend $25 on at Starbucks in the last week? It's like, oh my gosh,
it's
what
like
happened?
holiday drinks came out. What can I say?
I know. Sign me up. Oh my gosh, what did I buy? Yeah, it's like, and those were the reactions that Derek and I were having when we were spending it on our credit cards. We'd look back and we're like, what did I buy? Like, what do I actually have to show for this amount on this card? Nothing.
That's good. Yeah.
So you're just not seeing the change of hands of money, and there's no reaction to it. And so it's hard to get your brain to think about that. So just don't take the risk. Don't be tempted if you aren't the one that control the impulses. You have to be wise.
Yeah.
And you have to beat yourself out. Be wiser than yourself and know yourself enough to know I maybe shouldn't do that.
Yeah. And maybe you have the credit card and you fill up with gas and then you come home and you leave it at the house. Like it stays at the house all of the time, except for the one time you go and get gas.
Yeah.
And put it on.
Maybe you don't carry it. Or your spouse has it and in order for you to get it,
you have to ask permission.
Essentially, and if that's only works if you don't, I'm not saying it's a controlling issue because that's a whole nother conversation for another podcast. But but you just have to know each other well enough to know where your strengths and weaknesses are and how you can help each other in those. Because that's what marriage is about, right? It's like complementing each other, helping through your strengths and weaknesses. And money is really no different than that. We all have things that we want, that we claim are needs, but that we want. And now you have to figure out, how can I manage that?
Yeah. That was one of the biggest lessons that we learned, or especially I learned from the last year of doing those no spend months, was like at the end of the month, I would try to make note of like what I noticed and what I learned. And every time it was, I have what I need. I have what I need. And it's so convicting because it's so easy to fall back into that same pattern of the stress spend or the impulse buy. Yeah. And whenever you reflect on those things, it's, I have all that I need. Yeah.
You've got to be content with what you have.
Yeah. And praying the fruit of the Spirit over your life. Like pray for self-control. That is, I pray for that for myself frequently. Just Lord, give me the self-control and give me the wisdom.
Yeah. And pray for unity in your marriage regarding this topic.
Yeah.
Like, I know that it's hard if you and your spouse are not on the same page with this, it's just, you can try and dig yourself out of a hole, but if the other person's digging you farther in, it's just hard.
Yeah.
And so I think first and foremost, if we're wanting to do something that we know is honoring to the Lord, then it's at his feet that we find the strength to do it and the means to do it. Like we have to go first to the Lord. There have been times in our marriage where I have prayed that the Lord would help us financially with this or that, or just, Lord, would you show your faithfulness? And maybe that morning I ran out of eggs, and then Joel shows up from work and is like, oh, one of my coworkers has chickens and she gave me these eggs today. Or like just different things of like, the Lord is so ever present in our day-to-day lives, and this issue is not outside of him, and it's not outside of his faithfulness, and it's not outside of his control.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think it's just so good. It's so easy for money to become our idol or our safety and our security.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said earlier, Meghann, really viewing it as this is the Lord's, from the Lord and to the Lord, is not only like giving him the glory and honor and thanks that he deserves, but it's humbling ourselves and our pride of thinking this is mine.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also like crushing that idolatry of submitting it under his lordship. And that's such a huge component of this as well.
Mm-hmm.
He is faithful. He's
Mhm.
always faithful. There are so many times in our early parts of our marriage where it was, all right, I need to tithe. Like, I need to do this. Like,
Yeah.
that's something that we believe that we're called to do. And so we're going to do this. And then I'll be like, well, I don't know how we're going to buy groceries, or I don't know how we're going to do this. But Derek, being high in belief, was like, no, we got to push through. We have to do this. We have to be faithful.
Yeah.
And so we would faithfully give. And then like halfway through the month, there'd be like some check that would show up that we'd be getting back from, I don't know, some doctor's visit that we went to or something. And be like, oh, well, there we go. There's the money. And so like, he's just asking us to be faithful.
Yeah.
Faithful in all the things that we have. And he is always faithful to us.
Yeah.
We're not going to go without.
Yeah.
Like, he's not going to let his people suffer. And sometimes no is the right answer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We may feel like we're suffering, but sometimes no is the right answer. Saying no to ourselves and yes to him.
Yeah.
Awesome. Is there anything else that you want to share before we go for the evening?
Oh my gosh.
Meghann came prepared, y'all. She's got papers of
Welcome
notes.
to Life with Meghann.
So organized.
Top 5 strengths, all executing. Welcome to Life with me. And not Life with Derek, because that's not his life. That's why we complete each other, y'all.
That's
Yes.
beautiful.
It is beautiful. That's the best thing about marriage.
It is.
Yeah.
It's completing each other. It's so nice. I know we've talked about the encouraging piece, and like this can feel really daunting and really overwhelming. Like, you might be in a place where like, I don't even have extra money. I don't have money to give. I am in too much of credit card debt, whatever it is. Like, and you just feel so burdened and overwhelmed. I would just say, first and foremost, obviously just go to the Lord with all of that.
Yeah.
He is faithful through everything that we've always been through all parts of our life, through all seasons where we were young and broke, getting married, to the season of paying off and making sacrifices that people didn't understand that we were doing, that they still don't understand why we live the way that we live, to where we are now, where if God calls me to do this, I can do this. Like, I can give and live like no one else at this point in my life, because we made sacrifices early to do that. But it's baby steps, like not just the baby steps of Dave Ramsey, but like it's just one step at a time, one step forward, one small victory in whatever goal is. And if you need to break it down to as simple as, I didn't spend $50 on coffee this month, I only spent $25. Like, whatever it is, like, just start small to give yourself those small victories and start seeing those wins and accounting for those, and having someone to share it with, whether you have a spouse or you have your best friend that you're telling and sharing with, like sharing those victories with each other. That was the most encouraging piece to me, was like making those small wins and like seeing the end result of that, and realizing that because of what God downloaded in us early in our marriage, and because of our faithfulness to that calling, we both now in our marriage are at a better place than our parents ever were at that age.
Mm-hmm.
And we're working on breaking that cycle of living paycheck to paycheck and not knowing how to manage our money, and like changing that with our kids.
Mm-hmm.
And having those conversations with them, and just changing lives, because if I can teach them, they can teach their kids. And it's like a cycle of this new money thoughtfulness and management and awareness and stewardship of what, and recognition of this is all God's. Everything I have in my life is His. And how can I honor Him with everything that He's given us?
Yeah.
I think that that's just one of the most important pieces. And there's no cookie cutter way to get to whatever your end result is. And nobody's path is going to be the same. And you may take 10 steps back and 2 steps forward, but you're still making progress, and just celebrate that. And don't get discouraged.
I love that. That's really good. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for inviting me.
I learned a
was
lot.
fun. This
was fun.
Listen, you can talk about money and it doesn't have to be awful.
Yeah.
Like it can still be fun. You can still laugh, and we can still celebrate and then do hard things.
Yeah.
Like saying no to ourselves is hard,
Yeah.
but we're supposed to.
We can do it.
Yeah. You and Derek need to do a podcast.
Oh my gosh, can you imagine what would come out of his mouth?
That's why it would be equally as informative as it would be entertaining.
Yeah.
I know. I've actually thought about it.
I love that.
I was telling my friend at work I was doing a podcast. I work at the University of Tennessee, the school, y'all. So in case
Go
people,
Vols.
it's something with them. They need to play a whole game and not just a half. But that's another story.
She
That's
said, I need
another-
a public platform to say this.
Yeah,
I love
they
that.
need to, but it's all good. Yeah, no Joe talks. But he was like, "So, are you going to talk about like financing your education?" I was like, "No, it's like I'm going to talk about managing money."
Yeah.
And that's fair, because that was a lot of my professional career, is talking about financial aid. So it was just funny. He's like, "Oh, okay, cool." And I was like, "Yeah, it doesn't all have to be about UT. Like I have."
You're like, I don't know if you know this. I'm a person.
I do stuff outside of work. Just thought you should know. So
I love that.
It's so funny.
Well, if you do know Meghann, I'm pretty sure she'd be good with me saying this, but come to her for financial advice.
yes, not UT advice. I can't
Yes.
get you into UT.
Yes.
Don't make that mistake.
Yes.
I can give you advice on that, but I don't have a back door in. But yes, please ask me about money. Ask Derek and I about money. We're happy to have those conversations with you. We're not by any means like the experts. We can just share what's worked for us and talk through like how best to figure out how that works for you. Like I said, the way that we did it may not be exactly the way that you do it, but you can still reach those goals, whatever those are.
Yeah, I think I know in our lives, it has been so beneficial for us to have a few different people that, like, we've talked with you and Derek, we've talked with our parents, and then we also have like a financial advisor that we've gone to a couple times in our marriage. And it has been so beneficial to have people who are just ahead of us in this journey, who we respect in the Lord and also in the way that they manage their finances, to just give us very helpful, simple advice of like, hey, when you start thinking about having a baby, don't think about that. Think about getting life insurance. You know?
Right? Like,
just
who talks to you about all
little
the insurances?
Yeah, just all of those little life, like, you don't have to figure everything out by yourself, but you do need to have people in your life that you trust and that you know will encourage you, that you'll leave a meeting with them feeling better about your situation and more hopeful about making a change. Like, that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, I think it's important for you to have somebody that in your circle that's like-minded, like that's not trying to discourage you from your goals, even if maybe they don't 100% agree like with it, or hopefully they do because they're in your circle. But like, you can't have somebody that you're going to, they're like, no, don't do this to get whatever to your goal is. Like, they need to be supportive of that. And I would also say that, like, don't look at people further along in their journey and feel like you, like, I want to get there. Well, you can, but they're like 10 to 15 years ahead of you. So like, give yourself some grace. Like, you got into wherever you're at in your life, and now you have to give time to get out of that or to get to that. Like, so where Derek and I in our lives, I can't believe we're like in our late 30s to 40s, but like, we weren't doing that in our mid 20s. Like, we were trying to figure out, okay, I want to get out of debt, and here are the practical ways I can do this. So like where we are, yeah, you can get there, but you got to give yourself that time to get there. So don't look at others and think, how did they get there? And well, yeah, because they're 15 years ahead of you. So like, give yourself some grace.
That's such good advice, especially for me who's really high in competition.
Yes.
It's like,
I know.
I
need to pay off my mortgage.
my house needs to be paid off next year. That's not realistic.
No, I'm an achiever. So like, I feel like
Yes, me
achiever
too.
is very much like in that category. Like I think I just swapped out competition and achiever because that used to be like in my top 5 competition and now achiever's in there. But I feel that.
Yes.
Like I'm constantly like, what's the next thing I can get to like and accomplish? And yeah, it's hard. It's hard to look at others and see like the things that they're doing and not compare yourself to that. But you have to realize what season of life they're in and where you're at in your season. Like if you're early into your marriage or you're having kids, like that's a totally different season of life and priorities are going to shift during those seasons.
Yeah.
Things are going to shift around. It doesn't mean you can't make progress in those seasons, but those priorities are going to shift as you navigate those life changes. And life insurance is a legit thing that you should have. Like, my dad does not have life insurance. And I'm like, Dad, what do you mean you don't have life insurance? Like you are 66 years old and you don't have life insurance? Well, great. Good.
You said great.
Now I have life insurance, which is fine. We're insuranced out. But I'm thinking, what? Now you can't get insurance. Like you're in your 60s. It's going to be like so expensive.
Yeah.
Like, get life insurance. Like it's important. You just be overinsured. I feel like that's what my life saying is like, just your insurance broke at this point. Like so much insurance everywhere. Life insurance, car insurance, home insurance, all the insurances, health insurance, umbrella insurance. Like there's all, and then Derek's business insurance. Like it's all the things. Like you're just insuranced out.
Yep.
But you're really protected. So, and the biggest one is the Lord. He's got it. And then he's got all the other things. So yeah. But seriously, life insurance is something you really should look into because it only gets worse when you get older. It's more expensive.
Right.
So
well, on that note,
I know,
get your
right?
life insurance.
Yeah.
Y'all.
Sorry, we got random trails. I'm sorry.
No,
that was great.
Yeah, that's somebody needs to hear that.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that
personally.
Like it's us. We needed to.
I guess.
I have life insurance. I'm big grown.
Adulting in the room right here.
Perfect.
Well,
Perfect.
and like I have life insurance through work. Like they have a small piece. Now we have additional, but like you guys run your own businesses. So like the things that we're talking about, like you don't have 401ks and you don't have life insurance through work. So those are things that you have to figure out how to get outside of those like corporate worlds where it's offered as like a benefits package, you know? And people like you're overwhelmed running your business and trying to manage that. And so trying to build those pieces in can be challenging too.
Yeah. I had open a savings account for my business on my to-do list for like probably a whole year, honestly, before I actually got to it and was able to open it and move forward there. But sometimes the things just take time, but they're important. Yeah.
It's the right season and the right time.
Yeah.
And now it's off your checklist.
Yeah, exactly.
The executor in you's like, yes, Dono.
Yeah.
That's how I feel in life.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel. Yeah. Okay. Well, this was great. I learned a lot. I'm very thankful that you came on today and shared this with us. I think this is going to be great. Share this with a friend. If you know somebody who's struggling, share it with them. I think there's great advice in here and it's going to be really beneficial. So.
Awesome. Go read your Bibles.
Go read your Bibles.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.